So, stress and burnout, there are two words that are so commonly used. I think even the
Stress and burnout in the spectrum to the toilet, you notice that, wow, your digestive system is a little bit too strong or something. Yeah.
Yeah, when not food poisoning.
Okay, it's not food poisoning.
Okay. Actually be aware. Just sit down, wait for my body to tell me things.
When we cannot find the answer, we stress.
Yeah, correct.
Which is why the third party come in will be very helpful.
Welcome to Teabreaks with Therapists, where we brew conversations on mental health one sip at a time. I'm your host Chayan, and in this unique series, we aim to break the stigma surrounding mental health by engaging in bite-sized, insightful interviews with experienced mental health practitioners. So grab your favorite beverage, get cozy, and let's dive into the fascinating world of psychology, one tea break at a time.
Today, we have the privilege of having Junie here with us to share a little bit about stress and burnout, two experiences that we all commonly face. But before we dive deeper, Junie, can you introduce yourself to all of us here?
Hi everyone, my name is Jun and I'm a clinical psychologist based in a few centers. So I do part-time clinical job here. The people I work with mainly are adults that deal with concerns related to depression, anxiety, stress, and some of them even deal with like maybe life transition or relationship issue and also probably work stress.
Wow, then that would be just perfect for our topic today. Now, let's just deep dive then straight into our topic. So, stress and burnout, there are two words that are so commonly used. Are they even the same? What exactly do they mean and how do we tell them apart?
So I think these two words, stress and burnout, I believe the audience here and also both of us, we experience these two things a lot and almost on a daily basis,
Yes,
right?
all the time.
Yeah, so we hear this a lot, but then there are actually some differences between both of these two.
Okay.
Yes. So stress is actually a physiological and also psychological response that occur when we feel that we cannot handle something that happened. But a small dose amount of stress, or maybe appropriate dose amount of stress, is something that can be beneficial for us. It sometimes help us to stay more focused and help us to overcome challenges and probably even help us to expand our comfort zone.
So if I'm hearing it correctly, stress can be both good and bad. So if let's say I got an exam coming up, then I feel very stressed because I feel like, well, I cannot, make it for the exam. But it's also good in a way that it can help me to push myself. So maybe now I would put in more effort to study and really expand my capacity and hopefully achieve better in my right?
Yes.
Okay.
But when this situation that you meant, if let's say there are some people that they did not get the chance to find a way to better deal with their stress, this might be something that can be left unattended and this would become something that is harmful to us both physically and also
So that is stress. What about burnout then?
when this amount of stress, when it becomes left unattended and then prolonged, it becomes a burnout. We can actually look at this whole thing on from 0 to 100 and probably 0 to maybe 65 or 70 is the stress level. But when it is over 70, probably it will become something more severe.
Right.
Yes, and this would be the burnout.
Okay, so like burnout is really quite the extreme of
Exactly. So they are actually similar, but the difference here is the duration and the intensity of the stress reaction that you. Yes.
Is there like a number, if you can put it, let's say duration, how long exactly then will stress become a burnout?
Actually, it can be very different for different individuals.
Okay.
Yeah, for some people there can be months. For some can be years. Yes, stress is something very normal in our daily life, right? It's usually something very episode. So like the example you gave just now before an exam. So we might get stress and stress would go away when the exam is over. Burnout stays. The symptom usually we would feel that although the exam is over already, but we still feel all those physiological, psychological, and also emotional symptoms that show up. So you might feel or you might notice that you are constantly tired and you are constantly thinking about that exam, like make you feel that you are constantly worrying. Some of us might also feel some physical symptoms like maybe digestive problem. Some of us might fall sick very frequently.
I think basically Yun has also explained how stress can be manifested differently in terms of psychologically, emotionally, and physically as well. And stress can then be a silent killer. It's never too late to focus on your mental health as well. Of course, we hear about stress. There's sort of good stress and a bad stress, right? Eustress and de-stress.
Yeah.
So is stress always necessarily a bad thing or a negative one?
Actually, I think earlier in the beginning I was talking about how stress can actually help us to motivate us at some occasion. People usually differentiate stress into these two terms, stress and also distress. So eustress is just like what Jian talked about just now. But when you have appropriate amount or maybe small dose amount of stress, it actually help you to motivate yourself and stay focused. I think this is something that I experience a lot. I'm not sure about you. And I needed to rush my deadline.
Yes.
That amount of stress usually is something that keep me seated on my seat in front of my laptop.
Correct.
Otherwise, if I don't care about it or if I don't have that stress, I'll be around, walking around
just
doing
really
some other things.
procrastinating, not doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. So this kind of stress can be beneficial and help us to push our limit a little more. Yes. And then when this kind of stress become too much, become a large amount of stress that comes in one go, probably it will become distress.
Right.
How do we differentiate distress from eustress is to pay attention on how we react to that situation that happened.
Right.
When we are experiencing distress, I notice that actually the procrastination just now might also be a symptom of distress as well. So it really depends on the intensity and duration. Some people, they procrastinate in an appropriate amount that actually help them to take some time to relax and then get engaged in their work. Some people, they procrastinate to the extent that they don't do it at all. Then this become distress actually impair the functioning, and then we might also notice that the symptom that I mentioned just now, digestive system problem, excessive worrying thoughts, and also the constant chronic feeling of frustration, irritability. So when these kind of symptoms they prolong, they become stress.
Okay, so it really goes to what can be helpful and what can be unhelpful in a situation as well. Okay, then when you mentioned earlier that stress and burnout can be viewed in a spectrum, right? How can then individuals here recognize when our stress actually slowly transition to a burnout?
That's a very good question because I myself, I strongly believe in preventing rather than curing it. I think it's very important for all of us here to learn to pay attention to our body, to our thoughts. I think this is very related to what I mentioned just now about the physical, psychological, and also emotional symptoms. So it's really a matter of practicing noticing.
Aware of it.
So how do we practice this is really to just take some time in a day to listen to our body. It doesn't have to be like a whole hour or half an hour thing. And just like give ourselves that 3 minutes or 5 minutes to just sit there and reflect on what's going on, because a lot of times we can actually notice what is going on inside, what is happening here, but I think it's almost a habit for all of us already that we just brush it off because we want to get things done. Would really strongly encourage us to in the morning or throughout the day you go to the toilet, you notice that your digestive system is a little bit too strong or something.
When not food poisoning.
If not food poisoning, that could be a sign of stress as well. When we pick up this kind of small sign from our physical already, it's actually the time for us to also pay attention to how we feel, we think, and we are able to pick up these symptoms. Now we talk about the spectrum, so we get to pick up when the symptoms are at maybe 20 30, know that we are now in stress level that is a little bit too much for us, then we get the chance to intervene, do something so that it brings to a more manageable level.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. And I think awareness is so important because we are always on autopilot mode, right? We just chong. Chong means just through the day, thinking about anything except getting our work done. Paying attention is one of them. If you can just let's actually be aware. Just sit down, wait for my body to tell me things. When we try to notice, we become very conscious, even harder to notice the things around us. Like, how would you suggest that we actually pay attention to our body?
Okay. When we are seated in this position, it helps us to tell our body that, okay, it's now time to look within, pay attention to what is going on inside. So it's the chance and the time for us to notice that my breathing is now fast. Then when we notice this, slowly we can also shift our attention to notice the muscle in our body,
Yes.
and also some of the thoughts that are running inside. It's actually kind of like a natural ability that we have to notice what's going on inside. It's just that we forgot to practice it because of things that happen in our daily life. When we try to chiong every day, we forgot to do that. So it's really about it's really a matter of practicing again and again to sit back down and listen, to just focus starting from your breathing to your muscle, your thoughts. When you notice that what's going on inside is really a lot, very loud, just try to just notice. Let's look at, I am actually thinking about this.
Yeah.
Really as simple as that. Just pointing out to yourself, I'm actually thinking about my work. I'm thinking about my children. I'm thinking about my relationship problem. When you notice the pattern is repeating again and again, you know that actually your body is trying to tell you this aspect in your life is something for you to really pay more attention to solve something that's ongoing there. And of course, we really need to delegate some time. Really sit down and think about those problems, but not just like brush it off, brush it out. That kind. It's really about staying, sitting, and listen.
Everybody listen, please, to your body. Of course, in line with this awareness, then, what are some of the coping strategies that all of us can do or use to manage and overcome stress and burnout?
It's a very good question. We believe a lot in preventing it rather than curing it. In today's episode, we talk a lot about seeing stress and burnout in a spectrum, meaning that when we notice we have different sign of stress, then we know where we are. So at different level or different point on the spectrum, you can actually implement different kind of intervention. Everyone has different intervention at different point lah. In general, there definitely are some tips that we can do, can use in our daily life. One of it would be prioritizing our self-care. A lot of times we think that self-care is a luxury. We only do it when we get the time. It's something that I would strongly encourage all of us to make it a priority and make it something that we need to do. If not daily, then at least make it weekly. Self-care, a lot of time people think about self-care as something like, you go to massage lah, go
Something
for
very
spa.
big like that.
Actually, self-care can be just as simple as watching a show, taking a good shower, doing a very relaxing skincare that you actually do it daily, but on that one particular day you just pamper yourself by really focusing on each step and do the massage that you need. That kind of self-care routine can also be one of the skincare. For some people that they enjoy food, they can definitely go to some amazing restaurant and just treat themselves a good meal. That can also be a self-care as well. And for some people, probably their self-care is just reading a book or just staying quiet, doing nothing at home, meditating, doing yoga, doing some workout. And that can also be one of a way for us to care for ourselves. Essence here is about doing something that help you to relax your body and also something that uplift your mood. Like what Chan said just now, is really something that you need to schedule it, prioritize it. So this is the first tip of preventing stress. Then secondly, another kind of way to prevent stress to become burnout could also be intentionally scheduling a time to attend to the problem that give you stress. For example, exam example lah. We notice that exam is something that is giving us a lot of stress. Then when we notice the pattern, when we notice this theme, it's very highly recommended for us to take some time to look at what exactly is the problem that is causing us the stress. Is it because we are not sure about how much do we know before we sit on the exam, or is it about something else? When we are able to identify this, we get to sit down and think of the resource, think of the solution. This lead to my another tips which is to seek support appropriately. In time of stress and burnout, it's actually one of the most important, and this is from personal experience, that social support or appropriate support is very, very essential in this kind of situation.
Yeah.
A lot of time when we are in emotionally heightened emotional state, we can't think straight. And this is the reason why emotional support or social support that we trust becomes something very important for us, because this kind of time when we reach out, people that are actually not in that kind of mental state, they are able to give us some pointer, able to provide a space for us to organize our thoughts. These people is not necessarily therapists, or just go to a counselor to do this. Some trusted people in our life, like maybe parents, friends, partner, and also be the reliable the support.
Okay. So to summarize it, then it will be firstly to prioritize self-care. Secondly is to notice the repeating theme in terms of your thought patterns. Of course, thirdly, to ensure that you have the social emotional support that you need. So that can include friends, parents, partners, and of course, to a certain extent as well, therapists would be great. Thank you so much, June. And of course, I know that you also work a lot with, working clients. So I have, a personal experience of mine where a client just reached out to me and say, especially they are in the executive position, so the higher one, right? You notice like my employees, a lot of them are very stressed. What do I do? Can I support or can I implement any measures to ensure that my employees' emotional and mental well-being is taken care of? So is there anything that can help with?
We are now looking at this from employer point of view, right? From my personal experience working with employee assistance program clients, usually what we can do as employer is really creating a supporting and positive culture in the workplace. It sounds very simple, but it's actually something quite complicated to do. Culture is really a thing that it takes the whole organization to do it together. It really requires us to be very conscious when it comes to treating our colleague, when it comes to communication. I think one thing that we can do specifically to cultivate a supporting culture is really focusing on the communication between co-workers. And what exactly is the communication that I'm talking about? It is actually be really conscious about what we say, what we reply. When one of our co-workers is sharing their concern or is demonstrating some stress symptoms that we can actually see. So being kind and being compassionate when it comes to sharing my own opinion or replying my co-worker is something that we can do. And for example, one of our staff just approach and say, I cannot do this because I'm recently just go through a lot of problem and I can't meet this deadline. And before we jump straight into blaming, which is very common, first we start by empathizing with the co-worker and naming the emotion that this person is going through, like, I can see that you are really stressed. What is going on? Asking the person about what he or she is going through, and followed by asking this person what I can actually help. It will be something very helpful to start cultivating a supportive culture. I think this leads to the second thing that we can do, which is to be really observant of our staff members' mental well-being in the organization. This is actually very obvious, just like what I mentioned about the symptoms that I talked about just now. I think physical one, maybe only the staff member, himself or herself can feel a lot. But actually some of the facial expression or maybe their behavior can be actually quite obvious. When someone is stressed, the facial expression is always that.
So when it's not on the computer, it's like
Exactly. Yes, this is something that we can actually observe, and this tells us a lot about their mental health status. And being observant of this can help us to pick up the symptoms earlier, so that we, as employer, we get to reach out to the particular employee, or maybe it's actually a number of employee that is going through this one. A lot of times, because mental health issue and this kind of burnout, stress topic is not something very common that we talk about in our society. So a lot of times we don't really have that knowledge or that resource to help manage this. And this is the time that I strongly encourage employers, like big organization, big or small lah, to really engage with consultants, Remind Psychologist Center, because we actually offer EAP support
Yeah.
for organization. And what do we do in this kind of support is we are able to provide consultation. Employer that actually approach us to tell us, oh, my employee, my staff, they actually take a lot of leave, their productivity is low, and when they provide this kind of symptom to us, we get to ask question and help employer to really like kind of conceptualize or try to figure out what is going on inside, and then we are able to provide the appropriate measure to help to maybe change maybe just a little thing in the daily functioning at work. And when we are able to do this, we help the employer to reduce their stress as well. Because when we cannot find the answer, we stress.
Yeah, correct.
Which is why the third party come in will be very helpful. So I think this would be something that I strongly suggest employer to try doing this.
Okay. That's great. So creating a supportive and positive work culture, being observant with how your co-workers, your subordinates are actually experiencing their stress symptoms, and of course, most importantly, to engage any EAP programs over here. Well, thank you so much, June, for really sharing all your knowledge with us. And before we come to a close for this episode, is there any key takeaways that you like to share with the audience?
I think stress is something that we really experience almost daily, and I think this is getting even harder and more obvious as we adult. A lot of times we just think that adulting is something that is very hard, very stressful. I think one key thing that I would encourage all our audiences to do is to find your own support, find your own environment that can actually provide you with the support, because I always believe that with support we get to deal with difficulties with a lot of more courage and also strength, because we know that no matter how we still have our support at the back as our backbone. If you cannot find your own support, we can actually start from seeking professional help. And with professional help, it really helps us to identify the support that we don't see ourselves.
Thank you so much, June. Indeed, no man is an island. So feel free to reach out to us if you need any professional help. And of course, if this episode is very, very helpful for you, feel free to save it or even share it with people that you think can benefit them. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!